What's going on, fishy friends? We actually have a special episode tonight with John Fishstalka, Hostalka. We're going to be talking about his amazing adventure that he had starting all the way down at the southern point where the Chesapeake Bay opens into the Atlantic Ocean, and all the way up through the bay on a kayak. So that's going to be super cool. Before we get to all that, I want to talk about our featured sponsor for the night, and that is Backyard Custom Rods, owned by Steve Fogel. This is one of his rods, actually, that he made for Lady C. Steve is an amazing guy. He does some great customizations to these rods, but I will, just give you guys a first-hand report on these, and that, there's a nice little redfish on there that Lady C requested. But Steve will tell you himself, his rods are not all about, aesthetics and beauty. These things just flat out are built tough to withstand a big fish and give you the best performance on the water. Before we bring Steve in, we're going to review the prize really quick. John. And John's going to have the honor of choosing the winner based on the question of the night. But the prize will be a action hat. So these are GoPro, GoPro ready hats. They've got the mount right there in the front for your camera, and that mount can also be moved up here to the top. You can see on the inside it's got multiple places to move that mount. So if you're more comfortable having the mount up top, you can do that. And it even has a spot in the back to mount your camera if you're one of these guys that likes to, put your hat backwards. The other thing that we are giving away tonight is one of these Anchor Slim batteries. So if you are used to using a GoPro, you probably know that it's kind of annoying while you're fishing to change out your batteries every 45 minutes. So if you hook this thing up to your battery, it will last you all day long, which is super cool. And the other thing that's really cool about this particular one is that it's slim, so you can fit it in your back pocket. It's probably thinner than your wallet. If you're a kayak fisherman, it could be thicker than your wallet. So, no hit on kayak fishermen. You guys have thick wallets. Everybody knows it. All right, let's bring in our guest tonight. Fishstalka, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. How you guys doing?
Doing well. I mean, did you bring Wilson with you, or?
No, just me.
No ball that you learned to talk to. Man, no. We went on a journey, one that I very much admire. I've thought about doing this kind of thing before myself, and never either dedicated the time or put all the logistics together. So tell us, man. Just general overview. How was this expedition?
So it's been kind of a long time in the making for me. I've had the dream of kayaking the Chesapeake probably for a good 10 years now. About 10 years ago is right around when I got into kayak fishing. Up until that point, I'd been kind of a land-based fisherman. Wasn't really like super into, I've been into fishing my whole life. I grew up with I actually grew up in South Carolina with a big lake behind my house, and that was like my childhood is, go out fishing the lake, but just from the bank. In college, I got a canoe that took me down some stretches of remote waters. I did a kind of a longer trip then. I did like a 6-week canoe camping trip down the Missouri River out in Montana through kind of like central Montana. That was like about 150 or so miles. But ever since, I got into the kayak and started exploring the Chesapeake Bay, I was like, man, it would be so cool to do a trip, just do the whole thing. there's from a kayak, you're limited in how far you can go, like, so your launch
Well,
point.
most people are. Apparently, you are not.
Well, I mean,
You're not one of these people.
if you string together a bunch of days, you really can, go a lot further and get into a lot more remote waters. But on a typical day of kayak fishing, like, I mean, I might do like a 25, 28 mile day on a really grind of a day,
Mm.
if I'm not finding fish. If I'm finding fish, I'm not going anywhere. I'll just, it'll be a short trip. But so, I always wanted to do the Chesapeake Bay, and, I turned 50 in March, and my wife was like, "Hey, what do you want for your birthday?" And I was like, thinking about it, stuff or experiences. And I told her, like, I've always wanted to do this trip. This is what I want to do for my birthday. And she was like, all right. It really just meant having time. I'm a teacher, in my regular life. So I have my summers off more or less, but usually I'm doing stuff around here, like, taking my daughter to practice and stuff like that. And, doing the regular domestic duties. So, my wife has a pretty high stakes professional job. So she had to, shuffle some responsibilities to get me the time that I needed to do the trip. And, as soon as I had the time, I started planning this winter. I was like, you see the maps behind me here. I was like, poring
Mhm.
over the maps, trying to figure out logistics, like, how far can I go in a day? What's the best way to do it? Originally I had wanted to do north to south, like going from familiar to unfamiliar places. I don't, I fished this southern part of the bay a good bit, but certainly don't know it as well as I know the areas up here. I live just north of Baltimore, so I know the areas up here pretty good. And those of you that know me, like, know I travel, so I get around. I've certainly seen a lot of the bay, but it's not. I thought it'd be fun to go from familiar to unfamiliar, but in doing my research and talking to other people that have done it, like, sort of came out that the best way to go is south to north, because most of the prevailing winds are going to be west southwest.
Mhm.
So, if
Yeah.
you've been out on the kayak and you've been fighting a wind that's coming at you, you know what not having any fun is like. So, um,
Yeah. No, I've been stuck in many a storm, and I think every kayaker has experienced when there's, when you're paddling or pedaling, and there's a crab pot a float for a crab pot, and you're
mhm.
giving it 100% effort, and that thing isn't going further. You're not passing it at all.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's happened to all of us. Um, so you talked about starting the planning for all of this in the winter.
Yeah.
Uh, like what about time of the winter, and you know could you get a little bit more into the planning of it itself?
Yeah, sure. So, in March I got the green light for doing the trip. So I pretty much just started pouring over maps, looking. I think the physical maps themselves that I have pinned up are helpful to kind of get a handle of, like, okay, this is the route I want to do. Like I said, I was kind of had in my mind stuck that I was going to go north to south for a long time, and at a certain point, I think it was probably after a windy day out on the kayak, I was like, I think I'm going to go, the way that I should go, which is south and north. And then I just, switched direction. I had the route pretty well picked out. For me, the part that I wanted to see the most was the islands, like,
Yeah.
the chain of islands that are kind of mid bay,
Hmm.
going from north to south, like Bloodsworth Island,
Yeah.
Adam Island, Holland Island, down to Smith and Tangier and all of that. That's the stuff, like, as a kayak angler, I've always looked at it and been like, man, I bet there's some awesome fish in there. I want to check that out. And, like, I've never been there. So, for me, the big thing about doing this whole trip was really just a personal goal to, like, see parts of the bay that, you know, I might not ever get to see otherwise. I don't have a power boat. I can't run out to places like that. Um, honestly, it's just something I really just wanted to see. And, with, things changing and climate change. And, if you look at any shoreline in the bay and see the erosion, like, you kind of wonder, like, how long are those places even going to be there? So I was just wanting to go out and see stuff that, I'd never seen. And if I don't do it now, I might not get a chance to see, turning 50 this year. I was like, well, heck, I don't, if I don't do this trip now, like who knows if I'll still have it in me to do a trip like this down the road. So
Well,
it was
you
just,
don't look 50. You look every bit of maybe 40.
well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Or maybe it's the camera takes off 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's in the thumbnail for the video, but just so we can all get on the same page. Number of miles was
like 265, something like that.
265 miles. And we're going to get to this later in the show, guys, but once you see some of the fish that John caught on this trip, and then you take into account that he traveled 265 miles, it's a wonder that you had time to do both. I mean, 265 miles over, what'd you say, 13 days?
Yeah, it was like I like to say 12 and a half days because I don't want to end on a 13, because I'm a lucky number. But I mean, funny enough, the 13th day was the day like the shit hit the fan with the weather. I don't know if any of you guys in Baltimore County or Hartford County got hit with the tornadoes and stuff that came through last week on, I guess it was Tuesday. But that was right when I was coming off the water, and it hit me when I was on the water, and it wasn't pretty. So, but yeah, it was 13 days or so. I don't know. I mean, I trolled the whole way. So, even though I was traveling that whole distance, I had two lines out whenever I could. With the Hobie, you're pedaling, you have your hands free, you can, throw a line over the side and troll it. Honestly, I caught just about all of the fish that I caught trolling. I did catch a couple. I got into a couple bites that were not trolling. I would troll fine fish, and then I'd circle back around and be like, let me cast at these, this spot or whatever. So,
well, we can look at some of these pictures you have, and let me pull a few of those up. Some of these do not look like trolling fish. I would say, hang on, is that a trolling fish?
that is not a trolling fish.
Yeah.
that is a lucky fish. So I was actually it was kind of a windy day. It was fortunately blowing from the south. That was kind of early on in the trip, and I was pulled up on a shoal, and I was like putting on some sunscreen, and all of a sudden I just happened to see like big puffs, in about 4 foot of water. I see like big puffs of sand come up, and if you've ever fished for bull reds, you know what that means.
Yeah.
So at first I thought it might just be a school of smaller puppy drum. They tend to school up pretty heavy. They'll make similar kind of signatures in the water, and I cast it out and set the hook immediately, and I was like, that's not a puppy drum. So that was fun. I think I caught 4 bulls.
For the rest of those here.
And that's a puppy. Well, that's
That's a big puppy.
Yeah. It was like 31, 32.
Yeah.
We've had a great year, in the southern parts of the bay for drum. Actually, the last couple of years have been really great. Just nice numbers, nice fish around, nice range of sizes. Like, the puppy drum were anything from 18, 20 inches to, some overslots. There was definitely some overslots. And it seems like as the summer progresses, the overslots seem to come in even more so. And
now, did you have Go Gadget extend the arm on this one, or is that just a really?
No, I just have really long arms. So.
Well, I've always got a thing about big fish. I'm 6'3", 230, and when I catch a big fish, I have no problem holding them straight out to the camera. And the reason for that is because I make all the fish look small. Like, little guys can hold the fish in close to them and make the fish still look big.
I mean, I don't really get too much of a hard time with long arming it. from people, but occasionally people comment and just say like, "Man, I got long arms. What am I going to do?"
What are you gonna do?
Also, on the kayak, the GoPro is usually kind of way up front, so you kind of, you know, I don't know. I like to think of it as highlighting the fish. You're trying to show people the fish. That trout was 26 inches. So, if anyone has any questions.
Oh yeah, we actually do have a question coming in. Outdoors in Maryland, our buddy Sam. Sam, how are you? Say hello to Lori for me. He says, which fish did you enjoy catching the best? And there's one that I haven't showed yet that I have a sneaking suspicion was your favorite one to catch. But you tell me.
I've been on kind of a trout kick lately.
Oh, okay.
I like catching bull reds. Obviously, that's something. If you guys know me or follow my socials, I love catching big reds. My favorite type of fishing is probably puppy drum fishing, like in really shallow water on grass flats. Like that's my favorite like style of fishing. Standing up, drifting in the kayak, like casting the fish that I can actually see. That's just I get such a kick out of that. Like watching the fish like react to the lure, just seeing stuff swimming around the kayak, like from a standing vantage point. That's just my favorite kind of fishing. I did find lots of cool grass flat areas, but honestly, like there wasn't much on them when I came through. It wasn't like, you know, a lot of grass flats fishing. That's something I oftentimes find like down in North Carolina when I head down that way in the summertime. But yeah, I would say probably the trout. I was very surprised. It was middle of the day. It was like almost noon, and it was on 60-pound fluoro leader. Like everybody says, trout. Everybody says trout are shy. Like on the second day of the trip, I lost. I had like 5 different types of leader. Leader for bull reds, leader for trout. All my leader spools are kind of cinched together, and I had it in a bag, kind of on the outside of my crate. And somewhere along the way, it must have fallen out. So I realized, like on the second day, I was like, "Oh man, I don't have any leader." So I went digging through my center hatch in the kayak, and I found some 60-pound leader that I had tied on from when I was fishing for bulls, and that's all I had. So I tied it on, and that was like on one of my trolling rods, and that's what I caught that trout, a couple other nice trout on, and yeah. So I was like very surprised. Like I'm still, I'm kind of a little bit newer to the trout game. I love fishing for them. They're kind of an elusive species, especially when they get into the bigger sizes. So I would say if of the trip, that fish was probably my biggest surprise, and most fun to see it come up next to the kayak and be like, "Oh man, that's a giant trout. I thought it was a striper."
Oh yeah, that's always fun. Whenever I go spec fishing, I'm always whenever I hook up, I'm reeling in, and in my mind, either in my mind or I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, "Please don't let it be a rockfish. Please don't let it be a rockfish."
Yeah, for me, like a lot of times you can kind of feel from the fight of the fish what kind of fish it's going to be. With the striper, you get a lot of like tail kind of runs. You feel their tail shaking. With the specs, they seem to like kind of be just heavy weight, or they come up to the top and do like the head thrashing on the surface.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they do. Yeah, I've noticed that funny more down south. The come up to the top and do the head thrash thing.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like I right before I caught that big trout, I missed another fish that came up and came to the surface and thrashed around and threw the hook, and I'm pretty sure it was another trout. It was, I didn't catch any other trout at that spot, but then I caught some, closer. And it's funny because usually when I found a good spot, I would go back and cast different stuff. I went in, cast the mirror lures and everything, and honestly, most of the trout I caught on the trip were trolling. As much as that's not really a technique for trout, it's definitely working. So,
well, you talked about your I don't know how you call it, your bag or your supply of leader falling into the water. Let's talk about some of the tough times. I mean, it's 12 and a half days, 265 miles. You're in a kayak. there's some things that can go wrong, and just the realities of it, right? So like fatigue and things like that. Let's talk about some of the lows and and how you dealt with those.
I mean, first I'd say there weren't really any lows. It was like a 2 week fishing trip. So, um, I had a great time. I enjoyed myself out on the water a lot. It was just a really cool experience to be on that water for that long and be on it every day. So I loved every day of it. There weren't any days where I was like, oh man, like get me out of there. There were some times where I was like, trying to make a certain destination and I would look, way off in the distance and be like, man, that's a point I got to get to. God, that's far. I just found like, for me, like just in terms of goals, like, and this, I feel like it's kind of analogy for any goals in your life, but like if you set your sights for something too far away, it's kind of like it seems impossible to get there. So I would just like pick a spot on the shoreline and be like, all right, I'm gonna like pedal to that, and then I'd pick another spot that was relatively close and pedal to that, and then just kind of break it down by like making it smaller little chunks rather than doing like, all right, I'm trying to make it all the way over there and like be like dead set on getting to there. Cause like I think if you do it that way, you're kind of like you miss out on the experience of, enjoying your time there. So
Sure,
you know,
sure. I think you're underselling your own mental toughness though a little bit. Like if anyone's ever seen that ridiculous show Naked and Afraid, like some of those jokers like get off the truck, get stung by a mosquito, and they're done. So like
I would
for
say,
you it was 12 and a half really enjoyable days, but for some like that can be pretty grueling. I mean, if you do the math, you're looking at 20 plus miles per day.
yeah, it was about 20 miles a day. Like 20 was kind of my average. I had a couple days where it was 30. I had a good tailwind. I had a few days where I just kind of tooted around, like when I went into Smith Island and kind of checked out the island and stuff. So, um, but I don't know. For me, like I guess there are a lot of things that I already feel like I had in place. Like I've done a ton of camping. I've been camping since I was a little kid. Like so, for me, the camping part is kind of a no-brainer. Like that's something I've spent enough time doing where I feel super comfortable with it. It's not like it's not like, oh, what is this camping thing? It's like I'm as comfortable in my tent sleeping there as I am in, the house at night. So, maybe more comfortable at times. So, the camping thing was something I was used to. And then like the kayaking thing, like, when I go kayak fishing, like I said, I do, 20 plus miles a day. If I'm trying to get somewhere and I don't just find fish immediately, if I'm out searching around, like 20 miles in a day on a Hobie to me is not particularly difficult. It's if you are just pedaling comfortable pace, you're going like 2.5 to 3.5 miles an hour. I just had a lot of long days. I would get up. The light would come out in the morning at like 5:45, 6. I'd get up at like 6:30 on a normal morning, drink my coffee and hop in the kayak. And from there on out, I was in the kayak until like it got dark. Um, and like I said, that's the part. I just love being in the kayak. I could spend every day in the kayak. From here until I pass away, and I would be a happy man. It's just being on the water to me is like so awesome, and having the opportunity to do this trip is just like, super cool. I was really pumped to be able to do it. So, um, yeah, I mean, it is a lot of miles. I guess if it's something that someone is aspiring to do and they're thinking about a trip like this, it's not there are a lot a lot of steps that I kind of went through first in order to like be ready for a trip like this. But honestly, to me, like I feel like seeing what people like Kayak Kevin have done, like doing the entire coastline of Florida and like stuff like that. Like this is just like this is like a little it's like a little wee trip, like 2 weeks. I mean, plus the other thing is, I will say I had like really clean weather. I was
Yeah.
like trying not to look at the weather the first, the days leading up to the trip because I didn't want to like psych myself out. But like a day before the trip, I looked at like the 7 week forecast, and it was like every day was like low winds at my back, and like the temperatures the first like 3 days, it was like 70 at night in like coastal Virginia. And it can be like, I mean, you get in the tent at night and you're just drenched in sweat, like just
John,
not even like
stop underselling it. Don't you know
not even like
drama
moving.
sells, man?
What was
People
that?
want to drama's what people want to hear, and you're like, yeah, it was a piece of cake. I cruised right through it.
I mean,
It's pretty impressive, man.
yeah, I appreciate it, but yeah, I mean, other people, other people might have suffered a little bit more. I mean, I will say, like, if you want suffer and grind, like, I'll give you a little bit of the inside scoop. I won't go into too much detail, but being in the kayak, like day in, day out, you're sitting on your ass. So, like, your butt gets wet because you're in a kayak, waves are splashing in. So, like, that was the only like drawback after like, the first 3 days of having a wet butt. I started to get like a rash. I was like, God, man, this is like horrible. But I guess I just got, tough butted or something because by the end I was like, fine.
We got a question coming in from Matt Orendorf.
Hey, Matt.
Matt stole one of my questions. And guys, we still got plenty of time. We need to get you out of here by 7:30, right?
I don't have anywhere to go. I can stay the whole night.
Oh, okay. What was your best meal of the trip? Asked Matt.
Oh, so I mean, most of my camping food was like pretty much like cut and dry, like boring stuff. But I did have one night where I was camped at a really cool spot in Tangier Sound, and for whatever reason, like there was like crabs like coming right up to the edge of the beach. I was walking around, exploring this area, and I kept seeing these crabs come in. So I had my like stakeout pole. I was like, I had made a campfire because the bugs were, this is kind of an area where the bugs are starting to get bad. And the smoke from the fire seems to like get the bugs kind of under control. So I set the fire up a little ways down from my tent, and the wind was blowing it, and just kind of blowing right towards the tent. So I was trying to kind of smoke them out before they got in there, and made my night miserable. But I jabbed a couple of crabs and put them right on the campfire. That was probably my best meal of the night. I was hoping to do some cooking, to cook some fish and stuff. I had brought, some aluminum foil to throw some fish fillets on the fire. But to be honest with you, once the trip really got underway, I was just tired. End of the day, like, after being in the kayak for 12 hours, I wasn't feeling much like cooking. And honestly, one of the things that I did that made it such that I could really, move at a pretty fast pace was that I didn't cook anything. It was like my new philosophy is no cook camping. So I just brought stuff that
I was going to ask if you cooked any of the fish that you caught, but the pictures you sent me, most of those fish you can't legally keep anyways. So
yeah. So I mean, there's definitely stuff that I could have kept. Some trout or some striper. There are definitely some striper was still open then. So there was definitely some stuff I could have filleted and put on the fire, but it was just like
it's a lot of work. Yeah,
it does add an extra level of work, and when you just don't have much time because you're in the kayak day, daybreak to sunset, and the other thing is like as soon as the sun sets, that's when like everything comes out that wants to eat you. So if you're sitting around a campfire trying to cook something, you're also like somebody else's meal. Like, mosquitoes will come out right about half an hour after the sun, went down, and it was just like gangbuster mosquitoes right around them. But during the day, there was no problems. Like when I was on the kayak, there weren't any problems. Same with the black flies. It was like as soon as I got off the kayak, and on the land, they were just like, like crazy chewing on me. That would be another kind of something that I was prepared for. Like I said, I've done a lot of camping, but they put a hurting on me. I still have like my feet are still pretty chewed up. That was, my feet were kind of what got chewed up the most. I had one point where I think the first day I was dragging my kayak onto the beach, and I drug it across my foot, and kind of put a little bit of a gash on my foot. It wasn't a big gash or anything, but that started to get like infected like third, fourth day into the trip.
Here we go. Here's the drama I was looking for. There we go.
I was like, I was worried I was going to get that. What's that stuff you get from
gangrene,
flesh-eating bacteria or whatever you got that's in the bay?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I was worried about that, so I kept, I was doctoring it, kept putting Neosporin on it. So, but
fever of 107, right?
No fever. I was it was fine, but I was certainly it felt like it was starting to get infected. It was getting all red and grody looking, So
yeah, just wanted to say, Rashawn, Patrick, I believe it was Tim. We see you. Thanks so much for stopping by. Still got plenty of time for questions if you hadn't seen so far. We got your choice. You can get camo or black action cam hats, and so you get your choice of a hat and an Anchor Slim battery. These things are the bomb if you like to record your fishing adventures. This battery you can fit in in your back pocket. It's really slim. So you kind of alluded to this, but it sounded like you camped the whole way. So you stopped
I camped all the way except for one night. I have some friends that live on the Chop Tank.
Okay.
John and Kathy Sandcooler, they are on the Chop Tank River, and their daughter is actually a former student of mine. I graduated maybe like 10, 12 years ago now, and we've just kind of stayed in touch. And we've been out. My daughter and I have been out there to visit with them like years ago, and they were like, "Yeah, you should come through when you're on your way through." And they were like super pumped to have me come out. So it was just neat to have like somebody that you knew to talk to. Like that was the other part is like you get on the kayak, you get kind of lonely just sitting there by yourself. So I was like Spotify playlists. I'd listen to Spotify. I'd kind of just get in the zone where I'd chill out and pedal. I did a good bit of writing like during the day. I'd write like my posts and stuff for what I was doing for the day, so that kind of kept me busy too. But not having anybody to talk to for a long time is definitely that puts a little bit of a grind on you. So, but yeah, it was that was my only like real stopover. As you get further in the bay, there were some places that I was looking at staying, but it just didn't end up working out. I had, stashed food with the marina in Kent Narrows. I was going to stay there, but just my timing was like, I was a little short the day before I was going to get there. And it was like another 8 miles to go, and it kind of got dark, and I got on a really awesome striper bite. So it was like, and didn't end up staying, but they were great about like, storing food for me and stuff for the trip. I basically for food, I did 3 5-gallon buckets with, basically my provisions. I did provisions. I did like canned stuff with a pop top lid. My Chef Boyardee.
Somebody commented on here that you really love soup.
I do. I like my soup. Granola bars, and then dinner I usually did something like super high calorie, like some kind of rice packet that's already cooked.
I think that's what I would struggle with the most. Like, I'm not going to be your guy on Naked and Afraid. Well, first of all, I'm not going to be on Naked and Afraid. They don't want me on there. But like a mosquito bite's not going to run me off. Bugs don't bother me. That probably would get me. Like eating, rice protein packs by day 4. I would want like a really good meal by that point.
I mean, I will say I did have a crab cake on Tangier. So I went into Tangier. I was like, it's like, who has good food around here? So I had a crab cake there, and then I had a burger at Kent Narrows. But that was honestly the part. I feel like I'm still playing catch up now. I've been like eating like crazy ever since I got home. I'm like,
So that was one of my questions. How much weight did you lose?
I mean, I tend to be one of those people where I don't really gain or lose weight too much. So I'm kind of always the same weight. I don't weigh myself typically either. So I have no idea. I didn't. My wife said she thought I came back looking kind of skinny, but
I'm sure you did. I mean, like
I might
a crab cake, a burger, and then like rice protein bags. and kayaking 20 miles a day, even the most like steady metabolism guy is going to lose. I mean, you probably lost like 50 pounds, right?
Could be. I mean, could be. I certainly didn't feel it.
Yeah.
I wasn't starving. I mean, I ate good. I for because I was traveling like way faster than I thought. I ended up getting to my food stops. So I had like 3 5-gallon buckets with like food and junk in it stashed. The first two were stashed, just on like one was on an island, the other one was like on a shoreline that I knew I was going to be passing by. And I got to both of them like a day or 2 days before I really needed the stuff. So I had like tons of stuff. It was like more an issue of like the weight of all the food and like being able to fit it in the kayak. So,
Mm.
I was pretty weighted down with water was the biggest one weight wise. I took, 4 gallon jugs of water that I had behind my seat. I rationed like one of those a day. And I would kind of force. I'm not a super like, oh my god, I'm so thirsty person. Heat usually doesn't bother me, but there were some days where it was just like it was bacon, and I was just like forcing myself to drink because I knew I would, get in a sticky situation if I didn't.
Sure.
So, staying hydrated was a big part of it.
And then
But
being strategic because you had to refill those at certain points, right? So,
yeah,
you know,
but like
on
I
the,
said, I got to each of my food stops like a day early, so I was like I had ample by the second one. I actually ended up dumping it because I knew I was going to my friend John and Kathy's, and that I'd be able to fill up there. And then at Kent Narrows, I did fill up some water there for like the last 2 3 days. So
that must have been for your friends, that must have been interesting. It's like, oh, we have a friend coming over. Oh yeah, when's he getting here? Whenever he paddles it, whenever he paddles in.
yeah, I mean, I told them I was doing the trip, and then I think they thought I was going north to south, and I was posting some stuff from Virginia, and they were like, "Oh no, we missed you," and I was like, "No, I'm going south and north," and they were like, "Oh yeah." So I just told them I'd let them know like 2 days, 2 days ahead, and they were cool with just like short notice and stuff. So it was great.
So we have some questions coming in. One from Patrick Spencouch. Patrick, I hope I'm getting your name right. He says, "Hey John, is loneliness a big issue, or are you used to it for longer trips?"
I've always kind of been a loner. I don't know. Like for me, I don't typically find that I get, super lonely. I'm just like, if you're somebody that's in touch with nature, I feel like you're never really alone. For me, there was like a connection to the water and all this, I'd see like foxes and deer and like all kinds of animals. And, I did probably start talking to things a little bit more than I would normally, like, hey, Mr. Deer. So, no, I don't, I feel like when I'm in nature, I don't really feel alone because it's not just me that's there. There's all kinds of stuff, to see and interact with and experience. So not really, hasn't really been an issue for me. I know I've talked to other people that just have said like, yeah, I don't think I'd be able to do that just being by yourself that long. So, but, I mean, I did have my phone and I was like texting my friends like all day on the kayak. They're probably getting tired of me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wonder. That's one of the things as I was preparing the questions for this show that I wanted to ask you, and that was like all that alone time. Um, I was thinking either A, I'd go crazy, or B, I would have come up with some solution to some major world problem, like I would have cured COVID or solved hunger or something like that. Or I would have just gone completely bonkers and, they would have found me sunburned and naked running around some deserted island in the middle of the bay. But yeah, that was okay for you, I guess.
No, I didn't really have any problems. Like for me, I feel like the time by myself, like, I mean, for me, I was never raised a particularly religious person. We didn't go to church growing up, but for me, like being on the kayak and being on the water, that's kind of my church. I feel like I came to, a better understanding, of my place in the world. A deeper understanding of my place in nature and things like that. So, there's to a lot of people when you think about yourself being alone out there, that's because you've shut yourself off from the world. Like I said, I didn't particularly feel alone, but I feel like that connection to like the natural world really like expanded, in a way that I wasn't even really thinking about. It's not something I set out to do, but it certainly is something that came about in the experience of being out there. So,
So
and
another good
I did see people. It's not like I was by myself the entire time. Especially once I ran out of fishing line and lost all my leader spools, I was like pulling up to every kayak and every angler I could find, be like, "Hey, you don't have any extra leader, do you?" And I did get like, two people gave me leader, which was awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
That got me through the rest of the trip. So
Yeah, I would imagine being stuck with 60-pound. That's like chain. If you're a light tackle fisherman, 60-pound fluoro is basically like fishing with chain. It feels that thick.
yeah.
Our friend Sam at Outdoors in Maryland has another question, and then it looks like there's one coming after that. But Sam asked, "What is your next adventure going to be?" I mean, this is only proven that you're Iron Man. I mean, you're ready to go like Kayak Kevin.
I mean, if I can get more time, I have, my other dream that I've always had is doing the entire stretch of the Outer Banks, probably starting at Cape Lookout. I spent a good bit of time kayaking around down there, but doing like Cape Lookout, and then all the way up the kind of sound side of the Outer Banks, all the way up into Back Bay, up by Virginia Beach. That would be a cool trip.
Well, there's what I would say next spring for that, right? When school's out.
I mean, maybe I gotta see what see if I get a pass.
Well, you got another birthday, but I don't know if 51 is going to be
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I got a feeling my wife will be okay with it if I tell her I'm doing some epic
Hey,
thing.
maybe we'll do this again next year.
Yeah.
Connor Lynch has a question. He asked, "Did your perception of the bay change kayaking? Did your perception of the bay change kayaking the whole thing? Was the bay healthier than you expected, or were environmental concerns like pollution and overfishing more apparent than you expected?" That's a pretty good question.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thanks, Connor. I definitely feel like my perception has changed. I feel like the bay is a lot smaller than I used to think of it. I used to think of it as this like just massive thing. And even just distances, I feel like I look at it a little different. Like there's a lot of things I feel like I've changed my perception of, like wind, distances. Like I used to be like, oh my God, it's blowing like, 15 miles an hour. Like, oh, what will I do? And on the trip, I was like, it's blowing 15. I'm here. Like, I'm not going to sit around all day. I would just, is it blowing the right direction? Is it behind me? All right, I'm going, and honestly, for a good part of the trip, I didn't have any way to check the weather. I was like, from, sorry,
Yeah, we can put up your
right about
your trip log. Here we go.
like here to like here, yeah, from like you know probably like
I'll float the mouse. Well, I guess people aren't going to see my mouse.
yeah, no, that's all right. Lower eastern shore to like all the way through the islands. Like most of the cell reception is like I would get one bar. So actually, big thanks to Matt Orendorf for texting me weather updates on the daily. He was a super big help. And he'd like
So you said lower eastern shore to what point?
to about the upper end of the Honga. Once I got out of the Honga, that was when I started actually being able to access stuff.
Okay, so there's kind of like an L, if you guys see, on the lower part of his route, on like a little up after the first third, and that's the area that he's referring to.
Basically the middle third, I would say the reception was pretty bad. Middle to even potentially a little bit down into the lower third. But yeah, reception was bad. I couldn't no check in wind finder or any of the apps, like, so I was just like, well, I can't really check it. I'm just gonna, what's it doing? Look out of the tent. What's it doing? Oh, didn't really have an option to go anywhere else. It was like, not like, well, I'm gonna go fish somewhere else today.
Well, what about things like, just cell phone battery, did you have, multiple battery banks with you? How did you keep all that dry? Did you have any
So
issues with that?
for cell phone, I thought I brought it over here and bring it. I use the FPV power lithium ion batteries. They're like 17 and a half amp hours. I had one in basically like like a plastic ammo dry box. And at night, I'd plug my phone in there and charge it up. During the day, I usually kept my phone like on airplane mode just to save battery. And then that was how I kept the phone going. That actually lasted me. I was surprised because I thought it would last me like 4 or 5 days. The phone charges that it lasted me 9 days
Wow.
on a 17 and a half amp hour battery.
So you didn't really have to charge until Ken Island, essentially, right?
Yeah. Well, once I got to my friend John and Kathy's, I charged up
Yeah.
my second battery. I had two of them. So one was for my fish finder, which I didn't really use. I was a little worried about it getting salt corroded with all the exposure. So I had it the first couple of days, and then for like big crossings and stuff, where I kind of was like hopeful that I would maybe run into another school of big reds or something. I would pull out the fish finder out of the dry bag, hook it up, and run it for a little bit, and then I let it dry off and put it away again. But that gave me an extra battery and a backup. So. And that's how I charge my phone, and that's pretty much all I had. I had my phone, and I also had like cords for charging up my GoPro batteries and stuff. Which honestly, I didn't. That was the one thing. If I could do it again, I think I'd probably film a little bit more. I'd like to put together like a YouTube video of just kind of the trip and an overview of it. And I did film some segments, but honestly, I didn't film as much as I probably would have liked to. I was kind of too busy, just kind of doing the day to day.
Yeah, I hear you on that. There's so much that goes into kayaking and fishing, and you add trying to record, and it's a lot. Fishing is difficult. Anyone that's watching this knows that, but people that don't. Fishing from a kayak is not easy. There's a lot going on, and then to make sure you get a good shot, and then B, make the time to edit it. It's it is something that I could see being a challenge on a trip like this.
And the other thing I was kind of worried about was just like running out of space on my SD cards, running out of battery. I could charge my batteries, but I was still like kind of overly worried about just depleting everything, because I knew I had a stretch that I was going to go through where I would have no way to charge, no way to like do anything, and I wanted to make sure that I'd capture like the important moments. So I ended up recording some fishing, and when the bite got good, I recorded some stuff, but other than that, I didn't really do a lot of the scenery and the B-roll stuff, and rolling through some of the cool towns on Smith and Tangier. That would have been neat to get. And
well, that's what the Outer Banks trip is for, right? We'll make a out of that. Did you get up into Eastern Shore at all? Did you go back into any of those creeks? I've always wondered how it would be to go from the main bay, because you can technically kayak all the way back into Blackwater.
Yeah. I did, there's a couple creeks that I checked out, like kind of the mouth of, if I saw some good grass flats and stuff. There's a few that I'd kind of been, eyeing up on Google Maps for a long time that I like went and kind of did a loop through, but certainly not to the extent that I would want to check out on like a fishing trip. So
did you get any snakehead at all?
Yeah, I did. I got 2 snakehead on the last day of the trip up near Havre de Grace, like on the way to Havre de Grace. So
got it. Because Lady C wrote in the chat here. Let me throw her question in. Lady C says, I saw that you caught snakehead during your trip. Awesome. What has been your personal best for snakehead? And she is not eligible for question of the night, by the way.
That's okay. My personal best is a 34-inch snake. That came out of Blackwater. That was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago now. It's been a little bit. I haven't put a whole lot into snakehead this year. I've been, for me, like I enjoy catch a snakehead a bunch. They're a fun species to target. But being that that's kind of everywhere now, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. For me, it was a lot more exciting when it was like I had to drive 2 hours to like Mattawoman or like go to, all the way across the bay to Blackwater to find them. It was like, are there snakehead here? Like, I hear there's snakehead here. And it'd be like this hunt for the elusive fish. And now they're just like everywhere. So I'm kind of
Not
like,
so elusive anymore. Yeah.
not so elusive anymore. So I'm, I guess I've been chasing the puppy drum and the trout a little bit more like this year. So, but yeah, I mean, when I did some of the areas I went in are areas that are really kind of far from launch points and areas that don't get a lot of anglers coming in there. And man, I saw some tanks up in said undisclosed location that I'm referring to.
Speaking of tanks, and we have another couple of questions coming in, but I wanted to. This is a fish that I thought was going to be your favorite one, which was, I mean, I can't quite tell how big that is, but that looks like low to mid 30s cobia from a kayak. That must have been fun.
It might have been 30, but I'd say it was probably just a little under 30.
Okay.
I actually didn't put it on the tape. It was super hot that day, and he was kind of flipping out in the kayak, and I just dropped him back over the side as soon as I took a couple quick pictures. I wanted to make sure that I got a good release on him. But that was actually trolling.
Yeah.
Trolling.
The main way to catch them is people chumming and using eels, but
that was a massive.
I think that trolling's a pretty good way to go as well.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty shallow area. It's not an area that I would think would hold cobia, but I've heard that they can kind of be in that spot. But that fish was caught, using the same bait that I caught most of the fish on the trip on. That's kind of like 95% of the time was like this boy right here.
Yeah.
Eye strike fishing.
Pearl blue glimmer. I love it.
Pearl blue glimmer. Eye strike fishing. The Texas eye is a great way to go because it's, it gives you a weedless presentation. You can run through stuff real easily. Your hook doesn't get fouled up. The eye moving around gives it lots of action, lots of movement. Belly slit for the Pro Cure, which I'm a big fan of as well. And Z-Man holds up, to lots of toothy stuff trying to bite the tail off. So those are and I like the 5-inch. I caught most of the fish on that trip. I caught one of the 4 bull reds. I caught the big trout. I caught the cobia, and I caught a ton of striper on that. I didn't pull out my frogs.
Good bait.
That's a great bait. I didn't pull out my frogs till the last day of the trip, and I did catch the snakehead on the frogs. So,
well, guys, we have a couple of more minutes and a couple of more questions. So, if you want a shot at the action hat and the battery combo, ask them now. Dominic Becker asked, "Did you work with the tides a lot?"
I didn't really have that. Normally, when I fish, I definitely plan my fishing trips around tides. 100%, I'm looking at what tide it's going to be and looking for optimal tides to plan my trip. But with this, I was there. I didn't really have any option. The tide was what it was. I went when I got up in the morning and pedaled till it got dark. And there was definitely times where I was like, God, man, today the tide is against me the whole day, or it seemed like it was against me the whole day, and those days were definitely a little tougher. So no, not really. But I definitely, when the tides were, when everything came together, and I was in an area where there was structure as well, it was the fishing, it just turned on like that. It's definitely, like I said, it's something I look for, but something I didn't really have the luxury of fooling with too much in terms of optimizing, because I was, had miles to do.
Well, you got people's envy and respect going when you showed those the pictures of the bull reds, because some questions about bull reds are coming in. Giovanni has a question, and he said, "What would your biggest piece of advice be for fishing for reds in the Chesapeake? Were you targeting them for those first couple of days? when you were catching them?
I wasn't actually out fishing for bull reds. They just happened to show up. Like I said, I was like, pulled up on a shoal and applying extra sunscreen because it was like super sunny that day. And I just happened to see like the telltale signs. Um, Biggest piece of advice, that's a tough one because like, they're just kind of here 1 minute and then gone the next. I would say if you want to catch bull reds in the Chesapeake, like target the lower bay and just put in the time.
Mm.
You got to put in some time, like checking out areas, check them out at different tides and see what happens in terms of finding stuff. Also like looking at some of the charters. Brad Foxwell, a good buddy of mine, Chesapeake Bay Fishing Adventures. Um,
Hmm.
he does a lot of bull red trips. That's a good way to kind of scratch the surface a little bit and learn what you need about different areas and things like that. Um, but there's definitely the seems like the bull red numbers are increasing every year and there are more and more around. So if you go and you don't catch anything, just it took me I think 4 or 5 years till I caught my first one, and I put a good bit of time in. But a lot of people look at a skunk trip as like man, I'm not going to tell anyone about this. This is like a failure. But skunk trips are to me the best learning experiences. The more
Hmm.
times you go out and the more times you like try to crack the code and figure it out, write down what you did, write down where you were, like next time you go on a different tide. uh,
Yeah.
you know all those observations that you make just being on the water or what's going to lead you to finding them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, and I like your perspective. I've always actually said that fishing is one of those few things where you know you actually need to. You can't learn from failure, but if you look at it your way, you can. Like I've always thought that you need to catch one fish in order to establish a pattern. But
But I mean, if you haven't caught anything, you're also like establishing the pattern of where they're not.
what
So,
not to do, right? Yeah.
and there's that, and there's also like the, just learning the water. I think the thing with bull reds or any like super, desired target species is, I'll get lots of people send me messages on Facebook like, where'd you go? What lure did you use? Like, give me all the exact stuff that I need to know, and I'll go down there tomorrow and catch them. But it's, you talk to any successful or angler, and they've, put a lot of time into figuring out each of
Yeah.
those pieces of the puzzle. And the best way to like figure it out is to figure it out, to go and not just know the bait X location and X time, because the fish move around, like you have to like actually know what are their overall patterns, not just what's the micro pattern, but what's the overall.
Fish swim, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I just think like the learning the water and learning the areas is to me like the key. I feel like I've learned a ton about bull redfish by fishing for puppy drum. I think
Yeah.
that was my first like real, you know, love in kayak fishing was fishing for puppy drum, and they really behave a lot like the big reds do, in a lot of ways. So you figure out puppy drum, bull red, or not too hard to figure out from there.
Yeah,
Um,
got a couple of more questions coming in. Bob Pino, uh, Hook Optics. He's one of our sponsors. He asked, "What was the most you traveled in a day, and what was the least you traveled in a day on your trip?"
I think day three I did like 30 miles. That was the longest day. I was like still pedaling, and the sun had already like started to like sink below the horizon. I could see my campsite. It was one of the ones that I had picked out for stashing my food, so I knew where it was, which kind of let me go a little longer. And then the shortest day, I think I did like 8 miles when I was around Smith. That was a day I was just kind of like checking out the different like places on the island. I stopped and hung out for a bit on Smith Island and talked to a guy that has a Tim Marshall, who has a really amazing artifact collection. He's got like thousands and thousands of artifacts he's found on the islands of the Chesapeake. That's another kind of hobby of mine, is like artifact hunting and stuff like that. So I did find a couple cool arrowheads and spear points and stuff like that. So he was really neat to meet with. So I just, we just kind of ended up talking a good part of the day away and seeing his collection. And once I got back on the water, that was my first like storm that came through. So that kind of put me back on land for a little bit while I was waiting for the storm to blow over. And then by the time I actually, tried to do miles, it was like a little too late in the day. So that was like 8 miles was my lowest. So
Shore Sharp is asking, do you have any links for the baits he used? We can link you, Shore Sharp, to he was using Z-Man Plastics.
Z-Man Plastics and the iStrike Fishing.
Right. What was
Tex,
the name of the big head again?
iStrike Fishing, the Texas XL jig head. That's like 5.0 hook, I think, or 4.0 hook. So.
And those Texas style jigs, Shore Sharp are they're known for having kind of a swinging hook on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is in the chat. I'll put that up. Z-Man and iStrike Fishing Texas XL.
iStrike are out of Charleston, South Carolina, or down in South Carolina. They're a great company. I'm really super big fan of their stuff. I love all their products. They're actually available on the Z-Man website too. They like Z-Man's from South Carolina too, I believe. So they're have sort of a synergy relationship between the two companies. So
yeah. To close us out, Sam asked, was there a fish you were hoping to catch on this trip that you didn't?
A respectable cobia.
Well, that cobia you caught is actually bigger than my personal best. So my personal best was a little guy. I think maybe, what'd you say yours was? 30?
I was like 28, maybe 28.
Yeah, mine was about the same, but not nearly that thick.
Yeah. I saw one other cobia, which was kind of a funny story. I was drifting the grass flats and saw a big ray rooting around in the grass. And I was like, man, there's a fish swimming on top of there. Like a lot of times rays, I'll look for a puppy drum will swim at the rays, and anything the rays kind of stir up, they'll go in and eat whatever shrimp or bait fish come out of the grass. So if you ever see a big ray on the grass flats, look for pups swimming around it. But this was like, it wasn't a pup. I was like, it's kind of long and narrow, like half dark, half light. I was like, oh, it's like a baby cobia. So I kind of drifted over it. The wind was blowing me. I'd circle back around and cast it in there. And first cast, he came up and whacked it. It was definitely a little cobia, but he was like maybe like 20, 21 inches. So, but he didn't get the hooks, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we are down to the part of the night where we choose who gets surprised. We had a lot of great questions tonight, guys. You brought your A game with the questions. I didn't get to, I didn't get to half of that. So that always makes a better show, I think, when the audience asks most of the questions and steals all my good ones. So,
I'm gonna go with Connor Lynch and perceptions changing. I thought that was an interesting one. So
let's go back. I thought that was a good question as well.
Actually, I don't even think I answered the second part of that, but I don't know where we are.
Did your perception of the bay change by kayaking the whole thing? Now that I read it again, it makes more sense. Was the bay healthier than you expected, or were environmental concerns like pollution and overfishing more apparent than you expected? I think you answered it pretty adequately.
Yeah, the last couple of days of the trip, man, that pollution part, I mean, it's there are a good number of dead zones in the upper bay, and I guess we had a recent rain event, but man, I saw a ton of floating dead rockfish. It was like really disheartening to see, and especially having come through like some super clear, like pristine waters in the lower bay. Once I got up north of Kent Narrows, it was like all of a sudden I was like, dead fish, dead fish, dead fish, pound net full of dead fish. I was kind of shocked.
Yeah.
But
no, Anastasia or Lady C and I are down about 30 miles south of Annapolis, and I like Annapolis, and I like the city of Baltimore, but in terms of water quality, I'm appreciative for every single one of those 30 miles because it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I feel like just between Baltimore and Annapolis, you got, there's a big change. So
yeah. Well, Connor, congratulations. You are the winner of the battery and the hat. Connor, if you could let us know if you're still here, whether you'd like the black or the camo hat. If not, we can reach out to you and text and find out. John, thank you, man. You are the man. We really appreciated having you on. Thank you. Thank the audience for all the awesome questions. Fishstalka, do you want to close us out with any final thoughts?
I would just say, like, don't wait around for your dreams to like happen. Go make stuff happen. This is one I've been sitting on for a little too long. And if you have something you're thinking about doing, like, figure out the steps that you gotta go through to like make it happen. And time is of the essence because we're not on this earth long, and make the most of it. That would be my words of wisdom. So thanks, guys, for joining us, and thanks for all the great questions for everybody. And Grant and Anastasia, thanks for giving me a platform.
Well, let's do this. Do the Outer Banks trip, and I'll come along, but I'll be alongside in the Boston Whaler.
There you go.
Filming the whole thing. I'll put together an awesome documentary for you.
You can have a cooler with some beer in it for me for when I get hot.
I don't know if you'd make the whole trip if we did that. Although we got to make it more difficult this time. This last one was too easy for you. We got to be like, Fishstalka does the Outer Banks. Wasted.
Yeah, that would make it more difficult.
That certainly would. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, John. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys Thursday. We got the Georgia Salty Coast fishing report, and we got Walleye Pete again. So that should be a fun evening of fishing reports on Thursday. Looking forward to seeing you all there.
Oh, and
Thanks so much for watching.
Also, a quick shout out to OC Kayak for their support and JLS Rods for their support as well. So
OC Kayak, that's Dean Loki, right?
Yeah, my man Dino.
Good guy.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Resident on 70 Road. Got a nice wife and kids, y'all, right inside the grove. You know I like Mr. Clark. Yeah, I should know he is my friend. Say if I just stay out the grave, he'll see that I don't go through the pen. Mr. Clark is a lawyer, he could lie stream. He the first man to prove that water run upstream. You know I like Mr. Clark. You know he is my friend. Say if I just stay out the grave,